Hey guys, I'm the Drink Pro. Today I'm drinking Seagram's Benchmark from the 1970s. What's up everybody, Drink Pro here. Thanks for joining me. Please continue liking, subscribing, anything you can do to support the channel. Share the videos with your friends. If you like what I'm doing, feel free to join on the Patreon and become a member of the Society of Drinking Professionals. Today, I'm here at the farm and I've got a really special pour that a friend brought me. Shout out to John for this delicious little treat. This is Seagram's Benchmark. This is a half pint, 86 proof, 6-year-old whiskey. Now the way you can find out how old these whiskeys are is they've got several different factors. First off, there's a tack strip, which was intact before the bottle was opened. The color of the tack strip tells you that this was made between 1961 and 1977. And there are a lot of other ways you can look at different whiskey bottles and tell when they were made, but this particular bottle, the only other mark on it is down here on the bottom. There are several different numbers here on the bottom of this bottle that can delineate different pieces of information. One of the numbers on the bottom of the bottle is a 2-digit number for the year the whiskey was released. We found the 7-1 on the bottom of this bottle, and it says on the bottle it's 6 years old, which means this would have been distilled in 1965. In 1965, when this whiskey was distilled, Seagram's was buying its whiskey from Four Roses Distillery. So this is actually a Four Roses distillate that's being bottled under the Seagram's brand. I'm really looking forward to trying this. I don't think I've ever had anything this old on the program. And you can see it's very clear. Sometimes older whiskeys are not that clear. It really does come down to how well it was stored, and luckily this particular half pint had a screw top, so it kept it pretty well preserved. A lot of times the corks let whiskey out of the bottle because they're not actually airtight, and so you can have absorption and evaporation, and you can even have corks start to crumble and cause problems with the bottle. So this is one of those situations where a screw top actually might make a lot of sense, even if it's not seen as classy as a standard cork. So I don't know a lot about the Seagram's products at the time, but I know that I've had a lot of modern Four Roses, so I'm very curious to see how those kind of profiles compare to something, 50 years ago, 60 years ago. So if we give this thing a smell. Oh, I'm spilling. No, don't miss any. I can't lose it. I can't lose it! That's good fodder for later. I'm actually surprised how floral it is. It's really grain forward and floral and bright. I don't usually get those notes myself from a modern Four Roses. Yeah, it's really, the sweetness on it is it's more subtle than I was expecting, I think. When I first opened the bottle, I almost got this perfume note hit me in the face of sweetness, but now, definitely getting this sort of slight herbal note. A little bit of subtle wood, like a charred oak, but not a strong char, not like an alligator char, something a little lighter. I will say, thinking about the Four Roses profile, you can kind of get the sense that this is Four Roses. Four Roses is known for having all these different mash bills and these different blending process to create their standard product. This kind of reminds me of a standard Four Roses, except there's a lot more nuance involved. It's a lot bigger and louder and brighter. It's like taking a standard issue Four Roses and turning it up to 11, but not like the Single Barrel Select. I feel like the Single Barrel Select does that in a very different way because this is only 86 proof and because at the time it was a relatively budget bourbon. It's got more of a mass appeal form to it. I think the Single Barrel Select is trying to do mass market with a niche profile, and that's not what this is doing at all. All right, let's give this a taste. I can't pull a lot of the notes off the nose of this, so let me see if maybe tasting it sometimes will open up your nasal passages and get some of that activity going. Oh, fuck. That is really good. Yeah, it definitely has that classic Four Roses profile, but it's way more balanced. I always feel like a lot of Four Roses products are too sweet for me, and this has a lot more of the grain notes. It's got a lot of a floral note, maybe even like a hibiscus coming out in the mid palate. The finish is a lot longer than I get from a standard Four Roses too. This is good stuff. Oh, so now that I've let it breathe for a little bit and take another sip, I'm really getting this sweet, it's almost cotton candy. It's very, very sweet on the nose after you give it some time. You wouldn't pick that up right away, but tasting it and going back to the nose really brings out the sweetness. Oh, I got it in my beard. I keep losing this whiskey. I'm almost getting this green apple flavor on the front of the palate. And in the mid palate, it curves into this creamy sweetness. That's the Four Roses thing that I remember, is that creamy sweetness component. Some of the Four Roses batches specifically are creamy, and that's popping for me. I get this early apple, creamy sweetness, subtle soft grain notes into this really gentle woodiness at the back of the finish that lets you know it was in wood for a while, but it's not overpowering and it's not prominent. It's not like the very old St. Nick's where the wood was really prominent and in your face and let you know it was there. This is sort of like a whisper of wood in the background. You know what it kind of reminds me of? It's like taffy in a way. It's got this sort of sweetness and creaminess that I get from a taffy. You know, to think about what this would have cost you in the 60s or 70s is really frustrating, because they don't make whiskey this good for that cheap anymore. So part of the history of that is, especially into the 70s and 80s, whiskey became less popular, and we see a glut of good whiskey because people are moving towards the lighter spirits, your vodkas and your gins. In fact, that's the same time period you start to see light whiskey make its way onto the scene, in part because a lot of the brands that were making whiskey wanted lighter, brighter flavors, something that would compete with the vodkas and your gins. But this goes back to an era before that, when whiskey was made to taste a lot more like what it did right after Prohibition and into the 40s. That kind of whiskey making and flavor profile targeting changed drastically over time. And you have sort of a nouveau return to these older flavors in the modern era, but it's not coming with the same spirit because it's being translated through new distillers and new master blenders and people that are trying to create different flavors that are akin to these things they had heard about or maybe tasted once or twice, and not people who had lived these flavors for 30 or 40 years. So it's a real blast from the past. If you can find yourself some old dusty Four Roses products in the name of Seagram's here, but really any kind of old dusty product, I highly recommend picking it up. You know, you're going to find some garbage, you're going to find some things that didn't age well, but there's some little gems out there, and I really got to say this is definitely one of them. So I'm going to sit back and enjoy some of this and pretend I'm in the 60s. Y'all should keep drinking like professionals. Cheers.